Hey everybody, welcome to Hear Us Out. I am Patrick.
And I'm Paul. How's it going?
I was waiting for you to say how's it going. It is our new intro and I love it. Um, we're Hear Us Out, folks. If this is your first time joining the channel, welcome. You've picked a good one because we're going to have a lot of fun talking about two movies that are very similar, but also very different. We're going to talk about their similarities, their differences, what's better, what's worse, etc. Paul, those movies are...
Resident Evil and the Underworld franchises. So
Yeah.
it's going to be the selection of films that we go for, kind of thing.
Paul, I'm going to start throwing up imagery, so I'm going to throw up posters for them both. Slight mistake. Sorry, I put up the wrong vampire werewolf picture as a little preloaded gag for myself. Because it's very easy when you're talking about Underworld, unless you call out, some very specific things, you could easily mistake it for Twilight. It is a far superior franchise in so many ways to Twilight, and that's just because I didn't enjoy Twilight. I know I'm just winding the internet up. Apparently, hate gets you views too.
Well, that's true.
Hey, working the algorithm, tickle the analytics, people. I haven't said that for a while. Which, by the way, like, subscribe, share, we love you, all that good stuff. Now,
Yeah.
Paul, I better turn off my Twilight. Sorry. So, Underworld versus Resident Evil. This is not like comparing, because people are like, oh, is it just because there's two female leads? No, there are a lot more similarities than that. If you want to just compare two female, superstar action leads, we'd be doing Sigourney Weaver's Ellen Ripley versus, Sarah Connor's, or Linda Hamilton's Sarah Connor. We're not. We're doing, they would have been considered horror at a time, but now they're just dark action, I guess. I don't know what genre these would fit in. The Resident Evil, the first movie, I still think could work as almost horror in places.
So I'd say that the paranormal, I say Underworld is probably paranormal action, which is like a fringe of,
I like it.
which would be a subgenre of the horror genre. The first Resident Evil is definitely horror. It's and then after that, I think they both go into kind of the horror action kind of grouping kind of thing, just to, as an or the paranormal. They both verge more into the paranormal action kind of.
Not to bury the lead, for anybody who hasn't watched all of these movies, we have. One of the other themes that you'll see comes up here is that they do change genre into not as good as their first film. I think that's the genre that they quickly move into in some cases.
Well, let's not beat around the bush there, Patrick. Let's just say first movies are great, rest of them.
Yeah, well, and actually, you know what? I'm going to defend some of the later entries in the franchise as our conversations go on. But I do have to say,
that better be on the Underworld side.
It very much is going to be on the Underworld side. Funny you should mention it. I have a slight defense for some of the Resident Evil parts. I think they had some fun with it, which is good. But Paul, similarities. I'm gonna go ahead and start using our visuals, our preloaded visuals, folks. We're almost professional. Similarities. You've got a main character in. Actually, we should have done a synopsis. Sorry, I'm going to reverse that. Anybody who hasn't seen these, Underworld is about vampires and the fact that vampires exist. And it is not about the usual thing when it comes to vampires, which is they eat us and need blood, which I really liked. They've already worked their way around the blood thing with some synthetic plasma stuff.
Yeah.
So, which was good because it got that whole end of vampire out of the way. So it's really about a age-old war between vampires and lichens. Lichens, for anybody who's not into it, it's werewolves. So it's vampires versus werewolves. What's going on? Our main character is Selena Kyle. She's a death dealer. She's wearing everything that The Matrix made cool about 5 years before this movie came out. And she does the best superhero drop ever to introduce her character. She jumps off a building and doesn't do a superhero landing. She just lands and bounces ever so slightly like it's nothing to her. From that moment, I was like, this is going to be cool. And in varying degrees, I was right and wrong. Paul, do you want to tell what Resident Evil is essentially in quick synopsis?
Yeah, so Resident Evil is a quintessential zombie film, but it comes from a pedigree of great games. So this is also a gaming like franchise, but instead of taking large amounts of the gaming story, they've moved it over to their own kind of like stuff. They've used parts of the games and stuff, but they've kind of made it a lot of their own. Resident Evil is essentially a zombie film, which is primarily based around a corporation called the Umbrella Corporation. They developed the T virus, which is essentially a virus that causes people to turn into dies, and then gets reanimated as zombies. And kind of the first film. Are we going into synopsis of the first films, or
just the general thing? So we're following Celine in the Underworld franchise. We're following Alice, whose catchphrase is "I'm Alice, I remember everything," or "I'm Alice," or at one point or another in most films she gets to say her name.
That is true. Except for the first one, for a while.
Yeah, true. Actually, yeah, she kind of ends strong on her catchphrase. But Paul, so everybody out there, vampires, werewolves, the other one's zombie flick. But the reason they're worth comparing is they're very similar in so many ways, but very different in others. Also, as Paul's just described and I've just described, they're not your run-of-the-mill. One isn't Twilight and the other isn't Dawn of the Dead. They've taken a different angle. Obviously, Resident Evil, everybody's going to bring up, well, obviously it came from a video game franchise. For my money, Resident Evil, the first movie, is brilliant in one way. Possibly the best video game movie ever made, as far as an adaptation goes. So it already deserves credit there. Better get that credit in early, because there's not going to be a whole lot to spread around for it in a while. Now, similarities. I'm back to our protagonists, Selena and Alice. They do like leather, Paul. They very much like leather. They've kind of got the whole, particularly Underworld, it's got a very dark palette. Resident Evil plays with it, but main character being dressed in a utilitarian or really not utilitarian and quite bondagey, matrixy way. That's kind of their vibe. They both also they both used the idea that your eyes are a switching on or off of certain abilities or upping your power level. And I have a couple little gifs trying to show that. In Underworld, if you're a vampire and you're about to go, I'm going to use a bit more of my strength and I'm going to be more vampire-y, your eyes turn blue. And in Resident Evil, Paul, they just mess around and gave her pretty much every power under the sun at one stage or another in all the different films for the fun of it.
We should explain that little bit of the power kind of thing, which is Alice is a mix of the T virus with human cells without turning into a zombie. So essentially, it's like if you get over the common cold, you get superpowers. But a little bit more to it. And
superpowers that they forget she has in certain parts of the franchise.
Or she forgets.
Yeah. There is a point in one of the later movies after the T-virus is bonded to her DNA and given her special powers that are activated by her eyes being like, ooh. And also at that point, and we're going to spoil all these movies, there's like 50 of her running around because she's also being cloned, possibly is a clone. Anytime you're watching her one of the clones. But she has telekinetic powers where she can cause entire rooms to just explode in front of her, essentially. And about 20 minutes later in the very same movie, she's having her ass kicked by, a dude throwing a stapler at her, essentially. It's very, very inconsistent. So I'll give it to Underworld on consistency. I know we're not like for like comparing them yet, but wow.
Yeah.
Consistency of how powers are portrayed. There's a clear winner there. The other thing, Paul, guns akimbo. Two guns. Two guns is a very, very big theme. Shooting people at very close range in the head or in the mouth. Very big theme for both movie franchises.
Yeah.
I'm throwing it over you to kind of go, and all of their other similarities as far as fighting goes. There's an awful lot of swords, an awful lot of like ass kicking, jumping.
Yeah, there's
kind of unrealistically.
Yeah, there's a lot of wire work here, which is the best way to describe their acrobatics. Let's put it correctly. Kate Beckinsale and Mila Djokovic are both very kind of like. They have a lot of gymnastic kind of training and stuff like that as part of their movies and stuff like that, but To add a little bit more flair, there is a lot of wire work with a lot of these kind of stunts, but it is very much akin to swift and fast like fighting styles and stuff like that. Both of them, and then yeah, they like handguns. They're not. They like handguns until they get their specialized like big handgun thing, kind of thing. And then yeah, they any kind of weapon, axe, swords, like they go for and stuff like that. So there's certain ones. I like the axe from the third. I think for the third Resident Evil, that was a pretty cool
Oh
axe
yeah,
that she
no,
uses.
she and the thing I'll give Resident Evil points for use of different weaponry. They probably do stretch it a bit more, and she likes throwing rolls of quarters into shotguns, and there's a whole film where
Yeah,
she's spraying people with loose change. Underworld went more down the route of everything has a really fast fire mode. All handguns are machine handguns. There's very few things that shoot only one bullet at a time, no matter how small physically they are. So she must be tucking some ammo up the sleeve and feeding it into the gun. Suspension to disbelief. I should have had it at vampires.
that's actually a very interesting point. I do like this because this will come into the world building part. But the reason that the weapons are faster, like the reason that they have fully automatic like handguns and stuff like that, is because their targets generally move faster, which is a really nice piece of like
Which I
world
get.
building.
It's just if you're
You know,
standing there shooting that gun for a good solid 5 minutes and never
yeah,
having to reload it,
yeah. I will say that
not
there
important.
is a bit of kind of like a 17 shot gun firing a full auto is going to be empty within a couple of seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, for an entire like 5 minute gunfight, it seems to be perfectly fine without reloading until it's an inconvenient time.
And if they've come up with a cool reloading mechanism, they'll be like, she has to reload a lot now. And they actually do that in Underworld. I think it's in the fourth movie. There's a point where all of a sudden she has to reload a lot, but it's because they gave her one of those cool behind the back reloading mechanisms. So they wanted to keep showing that.
Oh yeah,
You're
yeah,
like,
yeah,
right.
yeah,
So she was just doing this in between cuts before. Okay. Anyway, they do like their guns. They do like shooting
yeah.
people. It's a big thing. Also, they both like making their monsters bigger as franchises go on. And that strangely shouldn't have been able to apply to Underworld because werewolves are werewolves. But they managed to find ways and reasons to have bigger werewolves. Now, I will say that Resident Evil has some of the cool, like for anybody who played the games, in the second movie, they took the Apocalypse kind of character, this big, grotesque dude. I'm not actually showing images of some of that because it may well get us taken down. Some of it's quite gross for, unsafe for kids, etc. But suffice to say, I chose a guy from the third or fourth movie who had a massive axe, Paul. I don't know if it's come up on your screen yet, but
Yeah.
that guy, that was the first of the 3D Resident Evils. And there's a whole fight in a prison shower, empty prison shower, where
Yeah.
this, what was he about? 12-foot tall dude with a lamppost, an anvil, and this blade that he turned into an axe.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It's like an engine or something like that.
Yeah, like an engine block or something. And he threw it at the screen, and I went to see it in 3D in IMAX, and it was the first time I ducked for 3D. First time I full on
Oh
went,
yeah.
"Wah," because they were using it was just before we all headed off to Pandora. So they were using the latest IMAX 3D technology.
They were using those. Yeah, they was using the 4K IMAX cameras.
The
They were
Avatar
cool.
gear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So fair play to them. They're pretty good. They have lots of monsters. The variety is bigger in Resident Evil. Um, the I have to say the werewolves don't always look. It's not even the digital effects or the practical makeup. Sometimes the werewolves just looked a wee bit chintzy, even in their character design in Underworld.
Yeah, I get your point. It does feel like because in the first one it's pretty cool because they use a combination of CGI and makeup and stuff like that. They use like, so it's cool. And then as it steadily goes further down the road, like they start using like makeup and then CGI, which is a big mistake in the sense that like once you have the makeup kind of like prosthetic stuff, it's just like yeah, it doesn't look all too great like you should because like That's from the last film, is it?
I think it might be second last or last. Yeah, I'm not too sure.
Yeah. So like, yeah, it's because yeah, you can tell that like when they further get down the road, the kind of I guess budget goes down a little bit further.
Well, and we'll talk about budget in a little while, actually. The one of the other kind of things that the two movies share is, well, Paul can't see this yet, but Paul's in one of them, as you can see from what I've shown on screen. But no, the link here between Paul, it has been said that you look a little bit like Lucian from.
Oh.
So I tried to
Yeah.
choose a Paul looking picture. So if you could just lean your head forward and look a little bit furrowed. uh, I don't know how much Michael Sheen likes looking like you, but he should be very, feel very privileged, because that's the way I see it. He looks like you, not you like him, even though he is significantly older. So that's how it would have to work. What do they have in common? They were both. There's a household happening there. Insofar as Kate Beckinsale was married to Michael Sheen before or while they were in the first Underworld, because then she married the director Len Wiseman. I don't even want to get into that whole thing. But the reason I'm showing the other little girl is the Red Queen character, the holograph, was played by various actresses, child actors along the way. In the final film, which is Resident Evil, the final chapter, that's Mila Jovovich's daughter. And Mila Jovovich is also married to the director of the Resident Evil movies. So at one point or another, the star and the director were married, and they've acted with somebody else that they shared a household with. I know it's a stretch when you say it like that.
It's a pretty interesting fact. Yeah, it's a kind of like incestuous film thingy.
Yeah,
kind of thing. You know,
it's the type of thing where they all really do start working together. Paul, I can't let this one go. Before we get serious about this, they also share Game of Thrones. There's a ton of Game of Thrones people in both franchises.
Yeah.
Like a ton. You've got Charles Dance showing up, and in these pictures, I challenge you, okay, some of them are obvious. It's hard to say if you look at a picture from Underworld or Game of Thrones, and sometimes Resident Evil or Game of Thrones, and work out which of the franchise or which movie the screen grab is taken from. Because it really does just depend on whether or not it was shot at night. Anything shot at night could be any one of these movies.
Yeah,
or
that is
Game of
true.
Thrones.
I was thinking because I definitely think could I try just to play the game quickly? I think the first one, top left, is Underworld.
Mm-hmm.
The top right one, God, I don't know. I think it is. It's not Resident Evil.
Nope.
No,
because he was in the
of...
final Underworld, actually.
But is that from Final Underworld as well?
No, it's my red herring. It's Game of Thrones, and the other two are obviously Game of Thrones. Then,
yeah.
I
was sitting there going like, I know, because he's like, yeah, that's a pretty good one though.
The one that was meant to catch you out almost caught you out. I'm so proud of myself. It took me all of a minute and a half to come up with that, so I'm quite happy. But do you want a little fun factoid? Because there's another person that's in both movies. That dude on screen, Wentworth Miller, or some of you know him, the Prison Break guy. Everybody misses that he was in the first Underworld, because look at him. There he is on the left.
Oh, yeah.
That kid went on to be the guy that's Prison Break, etc., etc. But about, I guess, 10 years and a haircut later, he's in Resident Evil looking very, very different.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like in Underworld, the first Underworld, he is like skinny. Like he is not buffed out in any kind of way. Like it is surprising.
Yeah.
Like,
it just goes to show you that I don't think he was ever in Game of Thrones. But it does go to show you that the casting agents all run around in the same circle sometimes, I think.
He also made just on a side note. He also went to DC's Legends of Tomorrow, right?
That's right. With
and
his
also he was
co-star from Prison Break, joined him there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was he Flash? He was a flashback guy, wasn't he? Yeah, he was a Flash guy. He was Captain Cold, I believe.
There you go. I was about to say, I hope you remember, because I watched one episode of that, or 1.5. so I didn't stick with it at all. So Paul, I'm gonna which series would you like to talk about first?
Which one are we gonna get? I'm gonna say Underworld because I like Underworld first,
Okay,
and also we can talk about Michael Sheen a little bit more, so I can
talk
feel a
about
little bit.
yourself, which is my favorite pastime. It's why we should be covering Matt Damon movies because I look exactly like Matt Damon, don't I? Let me believe it. I know it's not true. Um, the Underworld movies, Paul. I am going to get it out here and say I genuinely liked the first Underworld movie. Not just when I
Yeah,
saw it back then. I still think it has a bit of charm. It's got enough story in it that they're trying to tell, and it's got enough action in it that they're pulling off quite, with a bit of panache. You got her shooting circles in the floor to drop through it. You've got a lot of like her. I've already talked about her cool intro. You know, Batman crouching there, talking to doing a bit of voiceover, but then she does the thing that Batman can't do, which is jump off the entire building and land on her feet. That's when Batman swings away, but she does a whole, yeah, I'm the real deal. I'm an actual vampire. Bat. Um, they don't actually ever bring bats into it, thankfully, as well. Maybe that's why I like Underworld. They do vampires the way I want it done. Nothing to do with drinking human blood, really. Nothing to do with bats. It's all to
but
do
they
with how cool it is to be a vampire.
don't they bring they do bring bats into it a little bit.
Do they? Oh, crap.
Yeah, because it's like the whole thing about the two brothers, one being bitten
Well,
by a bat.
yeah, true.
That's it. Like that's
Yeah,
it. Like
yeah.
there's no turning into bats or anything.
And actually, you just raised a good point. So there you go. Underworld starts off with these people are fighting, and there's a whole royal family of elders, etc., etc. Then they spend the rest of their time in the movies building on that, one way or another, talking about how vampires were created, how werewolves were created. It turns out it was brothers. Hey, who knew? One got bit by a wolf, one got bit by a bat. Bad day, and I'm not going to say bad parenting from the Corvinus guy who was their father, who ends up being, the royal bloodline for everything, for no real apparent reason. Um, it's it's a mess, but it's a great kind of mess, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like, yeah, they really do build a fantastic world, as you say. Like, they really set it up in a kind of, like, it's really good that the voiceover at the start literally just gives you a brief kind of like in a werewolf and vampire war, and you're just like, cool. And then they're like, Lucian, the leader of the werewolves, has finally been killed, and you're just like, okay, cool. We got this whole thing going on. Cool. Then they bring in like the chain, which is an interesting system of royalty for the vampires. And then they give you snapshots of the kind of why the war started, kind of thing, and then they give you a little bit of science for the whole thing of the whole virus, kind of stuff. But like the world building in the first one is really really solid, and then all they do is they just put a lot of action around it. So
Yeah.
the world building gives you enough to kind of go, cool, I believe in this. That's fine. I'm cool with this. And then the action is just cool. It's just giant dogs fighting, not sparkly but very fantastic, elf-like people.
Well,
Um,
having said that, though, actually, they also quite wisely choose to have the lichens, the werewolves, not just be we instantly turn into a werewolf. We instantly go dog mode for everything at all times, and I'm sure that helped with the effects budget, but it also helped dialogue. There is actually a fair amount of decent exposition and conversation from all sides of the table. So it's not just the vampires telling the story of the lichens, the werewolves. Paul, when he was acting as Michael Sheen, he does actually do a great little bit of acting to say, yeah, hey, look at me, I'm Lucian. I don't want to be, too big a dude here or anything, but I'm kind of a big deal. I'm the guy that's leading this war against the vampires because they were absolute asshats to me. And then the rest of the movies kind of go, particularly that third movie, Underworld Rise of the Lycans, it just goes back in the past and shows why they were a bit of an asshat to him and how and why werewolves hate vampires. So like they're pretty thorough in their world building as far as that goes.
yeah, like and then too, so yeah, because they do that thread throughout the war and stuff like that, and then they build in this new thread, which is a continuation of the war, but then like a new kind of like, oh, what happens if like you have half breeds and stuff like that,
Mm.
which is a really kind of cool completion, like continuation of like that first thread. So you've got like a lot of the world building around that, as I just said, a lot of the world building around that kind of like the war and stuff like that, and why the war and stuff like that, and but then there's this new thread that's we're following
Yeah.
that storyline kind of thing of the kind of evolution of the races kind of thing. So
And they carry that through with their okay. It's lead character time because Celine is the or Selena is it's Celine, isn't it? Celine
Selena.
is the or Selena is the you know she's the one that you're attached to. Except for if you look closely here, folks, see that third film? Yeah, that ain't Kate Beckinsale. That's Rona Mitra. So obviously it couldn't be because they're going back in time. In the third movie, they go back in time to show where it all started. But they brilliantly cast somebody that if you don't look too closely, you're like, is that Kate Beckinsale? No, it's a different actress. So fair play to her. She really does do a good doppelganger for Beckinsale. But back to why I say the main character is treated well, because at no point, even in that first movie where they're making her fall in love very, very quickly, at no point does that completely weaken her or just make her secondary to the guy she's falling in love with. She's still large and in charge. She's in control. She's having her own story. Her own story continues no matter what through all of these movies. All four that she's in. And I kind of respect that because you've got a point, even in the later movies, which they are much worse. There's no polite way of saying this, particularly Underworld Awakening. Like, it's bad. I thought Rise of the Lycans wasn't great. In fact, that was pretty bad. But Underworld Awakening is very, very bad. It's very bad. But even then, by the time you get to the last movie, which I think was a slight uptick in form again, you've got her talking about just being tired. You've got the character evolution to the point where she's going, I know that all of this is important, but I don't want to keep fighting. She's literally having that conversation with people saying, no, I'm kind of done. I've been doing this for, hundreds of years, thousands of years, keeping this whole truck moving along. Maybe it's somebody else's turn to fight because I'm just wrecked. And I thought, you know what? That makes sense, and it stays in line with what the character's experienced. It stays in line with the love, the loss, the heartbreak, etc., all the trials that put her through. And I thought they actually serviced the character quite well as a franchise.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Yeah, Selena does get a really good storyline, and they're consistent with it, and it's a really good care to a character that they must have, like, the creators must have loved to continue it on, kind of thing. So like I can't dispute that there's no ups and downs or anything like that, or kind of like, it like a lot of it feels like it's in character. So like, yeah. It's good.
They did a good job with their main character, at least. They may have made an absolute bags of everything around their main character in some of the movies. Like, I gotta say, Paul, first one, great. Let's rate them together. Where are you putting what's after the first one? What's the next best?
I would say Evolution.
Yeah, I think it probably is 1-2. For me, then, and everybody hates it, it's the last movie. I actually think the last one was better than the two that preceded it.
I would say I kind of like Rise of the Lycans.
I know you do. You've always had a soft spot for that. And it's one of the reasons I was looking forward to rewatching it, because I was previously very harsh in it, which is probably a little unfair.
Yeah, I would then definitely put Blood Wars next, because Awakening, I like... Although I've rewatched it a while ago, I can't have it for the love of it. I do know that Stephen Ray is in it, and it's simply because I know his son. So I was just like, oh, that's the one where my friend's dad is in it.
There you go.
Cool. But the rest of it I cannot remember. I remembered that there was... No, that's I, Frankenstein.
I rewatched all of these just for this episode. I can't believe you've left one out. Particularly when we get to the Resident Evils, because oh my god, Paul, though, no, just oh god, don't do it to me. The Underworld Blood Wars, the final thing for Kate Beckinsale, I really like the consistency, not just in how they tried to tell the story. Okay, the quality went up and down, but the consistency in how they shot and produced and tried. Their aesthetic is a huge, huge part of this. Their aesthetic is key in the first one. Like I say, Matrix inspired, but way more than that. It's dark. Its color palette is grey, black, and grey. And by the time they do the last movie, where they're heading up to the Wild North, because that's where they had to get the Game of Thrones actors up to the White Wall, they're again being very good at keeping a certain monochromatic nature to their tones. And I really respect that about Underworld. A lot of people are going to go, "Why are you defending this franchise?" Give me another franchise that has, even when they're obviously lowered budgets and possibly lower care for the overall output, that's still trying to be itself and still trying to keep its main character and trying to keep its core story in some way in line and give you new subplots and spurs that can still tie back in. I think it does show they tried. They weren't always maybe able to succeed, I guess.
Yeah, my thing is that, so I guess the best compliment I have for the Underworld franchise is the fact is that you can't overly see. You can point to some examples, but you can't overly see the budget cut areas.
Mm.
You know, kind of thing. Because the story does not fail.
Mm.
The as in they continue on with the storyline that they want to tell and stuff like that. They don't kind of they don't go, well, now it's about, Kate, just Kate.
Yeah.
You know, she's a vampire as well, but it has nothing to do. And then we'll talk about Celine and Michael, and kind of thing. Like they don't veer off to another group and then go, it's in the Underworld world, but it's not the Underworld group. Kind of thing. They continue on with all the characters that you know, and talk about characters that you knew, kind of thing. And I will say, yeah, I do like the fact that they stay with the aesthetic of vampires are gothic, so there's a lot of gothic, neo-gothic kind of stuff, gothic stuff, and lichens are very nomadic.
Yeah,
I like how they stick with that kind of stuff as well. But they stick, as you said, they stick with aesthetics very well and color palette a lot.
Yeah,
slightly changed. It's very blue, as you can see from the.
Yeah, well, I will say, the dips in quality. I think I agree with you. You don't see a massive drop off. Whoever the production team were, the set designers and set dressers and the location scouts, I think they did as good a job even in the worst movies. And I appreciate that and I respect it. I will say, Paul, because I said it before we went live and I want to get it out there before we move to Resident Evil, Underworld Rise of the Lycans. My primary problem with that, again, it shows my prejudice for movies that you just don't need in franchises. As I called it with you, it's the Rogue One, Han Solo, Black Widow, whatever you might call it, movie of the bunch, except so much worse in another very important way. If you watch Underworld and then Underworld Evolution, you've seen literally scenes, entire sections of what they have to do in Rise of the Lycans, because they tell the story not just verbally but through flashback, and then they went and made a film where they showed those flashbacks as a feature-length movie. Don't get me wrong, they added more, but still, it was a hell of a brave move. I'm still impressed to this day that they got away with it.
I definitely get what you're saying. Like Rogue One, a couple of other ones, I don't fully agree with, kind of thing. But yeah, Black Widow and Rise of the Lycans are very much stories in which feel like they were never, there's no impact of them.
Unnecessary prequels. We already got here today.
Yeah.
And I maintain, and we should do an episode on it, why that's still true for Rogue One. Just because it's a better movie doesn't mean that it wasn't unnecessary. It's just one of the ones that worked out well.
I guess, yeah. I guess what this is the fact is that, I guess I can definitely agree that Rogue One is unnecessary. It's just, it's the way that you tell an unnecessary story.
Yeah, they did it well. And Han Solo did not.
well, I don't. Yeah, I can't. I don't even want to get into that.
Yeah, let's. They'll turn off our internet. Paul, would you be up for flicking over to the Resident Evil? But just before we do, will we say hi to the folks that we forgot to say hi to? We do 1 week
Yeah.
without live chat, and we just end up not making space to talk to them.
Well, then let's dive into the like into the comics. 'Cause I saw there's a couple of cool things
So
there.
pull out something there. Hi everybody, by the way.
Uh,
Thank you very much for chatting away.
Yeah, like the Twilight stuff is just out there. Let's not revolve back into that. There is a Underworld game which was set after the movies, or it was set after the first movie.
Yeah,
kind of
they
thing.
made a cash-in game.
There's also an animated which goes Underworld as well, just to kind of bring that in. I can't remember what it's called. What is it called? I don't know.
I was scanning comments, so I can't help.
Alice is Murphy in Z Nation. Yes, except for Alice was intentionally a weapon, whereas Murphy got the cure that causes you to turn into a mutant.
I have not watched Z Nation, but now I understand more about it. I can see people talking here in the comments about Game of Thrones going downhill. Yes, we have a whole video on it. Massively agree. It's one of our more watched videos, in fact, so a lot of people agree. 3D worked well. Brew, I think you were saying that you hadn't seen these movies. I hope we're convincing you to watch the first one of each of these movies and then maybe decide whether or not you're really in it for the long haul.
He said that he said he saw the first of the Underworld later on.
Oh, okay. Oh, well then, there you go. It's got a bit of crack to it. Now, Brew, in a moment when we switch to Resident Evil, there's going to be a reason that you'll like that I'm going to suggest it to you instead. A women with two weapons in their hands, very consistent. You know what? I am going to say that folks out there, I can see there's a bit of chat going on. Once we've done talking about Resident Evil, I would love you all to just call it. You got to pick a child here. Underworld or Resident Evil, which is better? And you can't go, well, this one had a better second movie or this one had a better fifth movie. At the end of the video, I want all of you and everybody watching out there in the future land, get down to the comments below and just give it to us. Resident Evil or Underworld. No excuses made.
If the only comment that you're going to give us is literally just one of the franchises that you liked more, and as I said, it can't be a movie. It has to be the franchise.
That's it.
Just pop it in. Takes a couple of seconds.
Exactly. And we thank you very much for your participation. So on to the Resident Evil. Now, Resident Evil, and I should get a little bit of housekeeping out of the way. Resident Evil had 6 movies versus Underworld's 5. There may well someday be a 6th movie, Paul. We were talking about that before. Kate Beckinsale's open to it.
Yeah. We're still like in 2021. Actually, 2021. I think it was July or something like that. The Kate Beckinsale said that they were interested in doing, or she was open to restarting or reprising her role as Selena.
So she'd play it again, which I think you wouldn't want anybody else to play it. Either just reboot the whole thing and get away from it, maybe do a TV series or something, or else if you're going to make a theatrical movie, do a last one with her, let her close it out. Also, it would be nice symmetry. 6 Underworlds and 6 Resident Evils would be good. But sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, if they do a 6th one, it means that we could actually do a movie by movie kind of like comparison kind of thing,
Do it, people. Do it. Len Wiseman, get that movie written, made, and
directed. We'll tweet you and see if you'll be interested, just so that we can critique your work.
Because that's the best reason anybody in Hollywood's ever done anything, so that two dumbasses on YouTube can make a video. I can't think of a reason not to. I did want to call out what I should have said at the start. One of the other similarities between Underworld and Resident Evil is they both existed in kind of the same period. Resident Evil started in 2002, and its last movie was 2016. Underworld, 2003, so it happened just a little later. Again, last movie in 2016. Now, Paul, a little guessing game. Which one of them, and 5 and 6 movies, the number of movies isn't the determining factor. There's a big enough gap. Which of these franchises do you think has pulled in the most money?
Oh, I would say Resident Evil.
It's Resident Evil at 1.2 billion versus essentially $500 million for Underworld. So let's say they would have made it up to 600 million. It would be about 50% the box office of Resident Evil. I have a theory as to why. I don't think it's down to quality. I think it's down to inbuilt audience and the time that they started. I think Resident Evil, the game, and the games, because let's face it, there's a crap ton of Resident Evil games, had an inbuilt following, and that first movie being not a disappointment gave people the hope to go and see the next one and the next one. And as they got dumber and worse, people enjoyed them for their dumbness and their worstness. So you had an audience that then weren't getting what they originally got, but were just having fun following the character through the next dumb movie. I shouldn't have given it away. By the way, the Resident Evil movies go downhill after the first one.
Yeah, I think I may have hinted at that at the start, but yeah, I get that's an interesting point, yeah, because Underworld has definitely built up a cult following, whereas Resident Evil had a pre-existing audience that it was going to use, as well as other audiences that were coming in from like the zombie genre and stuff like that. Because like at the time of Resident Evil, the first movie, I hadn't played a Resident Evil game.
Oh, cool!
So I came in as a zombie fan.
Very nice.
And watched, and like it's only been not relatively recently, but recent enough that I played through all the games. So
and
like
that zombie fan base can't be underestimated either. Because if you aren't into gaming or video games at all, Resident Evil being in the zombie genre does not hurt with box office. Because there are people who will go and see zombie movies. And that's where our great long-time viewer, Brew, that's where you come in. If you can't dig vampires and werewolves, which a lot of people can't, although if you do it right and there's enough sparkle in their skin and they fall in love as teenagers, obviously you can make money out of Twilight. But it's a harder sell than zombies. Because Brew, I know you massively got into, and I'm talking directly to a viewer now, which is very unorthodox. He massively got into The Walking Dead, and that opens up the whole zombie thing. The other side that we didn't mention in Underworld, and there's a reason we didn't, and it's very uncharacteristic for that type of movie. Its music is fine but forgettable. Resident Evil has had some of the most banging metal and hard rock soundtracks of any franchise ever. I have listened to Resident Evil soundtracks before I've seen the Resident Evil movies, because obviously the movies were getting worse, so I wasn't running out and seeing them in the theater all the time. Great music, absolutely brilliant music. But also the zombie angle, it goes really well, gives you a chance to have some epic apocalyptic metal playing.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, the soundtracks are very. You can tell where the money is in some of them, in the sense that, like, the Resident Evil franchise definitely gets the money, and uses that to kind of like uses that to kind of go into the music and goes into a lot of other stuff. Whereas Underworld, it goes downhill. The budget gets less and less. Sorry, the budget gets less and less, and one of the things that does suffer is music, kind of thing. Now it's really enjoyable while you watch it, but as you said, it is forgettable.
Yeah.
But when you get like Rammstein and stuff like that involved in some of the,
you've got Slipknot and Perfect Circle and Tool and all sorts of stuff. It's all good for me.
Yeah, it's all my childhood of like music, you know.
That's the other thing. It's Resident Evil, the first movie in particular. That soundtrack is a snapshot in time. You could not be any more 2002 than that actual soundtrack. It's made itself famous on the back of that. It is a time capsule of a movie soundtrack. It's impressive. But Paul, to give these movies their due, now I cheekily stuck in a little Umbrella Corporation logo, because there's something that Resident Evil is very consistent with in both games and movies. They brand the hell out of themselves. Her name is Alice. There is an Umbrella logo on just about everything. They will rename or mention and rename the same places as though you're talking about levels in a video game, with Raccoon City and the Hive, etc., etc. They're extremely consistent in doing some things, but they're not so consistent in how they took, nurtured, and moved on with their main character. For my tastes.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Yeah, the where we've seen in Underworlds the kind of thread of the main character being nicely cultivated all the way through. Alice gets like I get like my thing would be in the first three films, it's a consistency through it, and then it goes off the rails after that. So it feels like this franchise was built as a trilogy, and then they discovered the power of stupidity and people just watching it because they're laughing at it.
Yeah.
Kind of action stuff, and they continued on with it. Because I would say that like after the third film, excuse me, after the third film, yeah, it goes. The consistency of the main character just goes weirdly off the rails and stuff like that. It looks like the primer plot, kind of like just
Well, they are. I will give them credit for one thing. They are pretty good, and that first film came out of the gate, setting up a story. It's their lack of care and attention, and I get it. It's based on video game property. You're going to be a little bit different with how you go with your story, but you don't have to be. They're trying to bring in elements, and actually, you know what? I'll pull up some other screens, because what they do is they start showing people from games. Like they introduce Jill Valentine in the second or third, and give her the costume from the game. And I'm calling it a costume, not wardrobe, because it felt like she was wearing, a costume from a game. They start, they introduce characters that last a movie, maybe two, but they're kind of inconsequential, and then they use them as callbacks because they're like, oh, when we're writing the fourth movie, we can talk about that person from the second. But there's no real sense of, we wanted to tell this story from the start. It's a bit made up as they go along. And I think, and the guy I'm showing on screen now, I just have him down as Resident Evil bad actor. I think his name is Sean something or other. Poor guy. It's when he showed up that I was like, right, this franchise doesn't care anymore, because nobody is acting that badly without being told to act that badly. And then Ali Larter, who I have here somewhere, I should throw her up at the same time. I know she can act. I've seen her in Heroes. I've seen her be able to act better, at least, than she is in Resident Evil. But this guy, Mr. Bad Actor, dude, it's the weirdest delivery. It's not even people go, oh, it's like a video game cutscene. No video game cutscene has ever been that rigid, weird, or purposely unsettlingly awkward. Not in a creepy way, more in a, I don't know if I want to watch your career go this way, mate.
Yeah, because he's in The Mummy as well. And he's
that dude?
Yeah.
Like the original Mummy with Brendan Fraser?
Yeah, he's the
Oh no, you check your screen now, because I'm not talking about.
Oh, do you mean Wesker?
I mean Wesker, yeah.
Oh
no, the other dude can act. And he was in The Mummy, yeah.
My problem with Wesker is that's
Oded.
pretty. Yeah, Wesker in the games, that's pretty much Wesker.
But that's the thing,
and it's like, but it's I get like this is the thing is I went in with prior knowledge. As in, I know I hadn't played the games, but I had watched people play the games, and I was introduced to these characters. And Wesker is a very much deadpan character kind of thing. Whereas, so when I watched him, I was just like, that's him. He's just a robot. He's a robot in human skin, kind of thing. But yeah, I definitely get your point.
Yeah, but
coming in brand new.
They did the same thing to, like, Ali Larter, she played Claire Redfield. I remember characters in games too. You can tell she's being directed to go, no, do that again, but just do it a bit more cutscene-y or a bit more video gamey. And there was no need for that. The first movie proved that they didn't need to do that. Because, they had Michelle Rodriguez in the first movie, and they had her back at the end. Spoiler warning. They had her back a few times, in fact. But, like, she was being Michelle Rodriguez. And she was doing her best Michelle Rodriguez, as she always does. She's the same in Fast and Furious also. But if they told her, no, video game it up a wee bit, number one, I don't know if she would have known how to, so maybe that's why they let her act the way she did, because she strikes me as somebody who's like, yeah, no, I don't understand why you would act like that. I'm already acting this way.
Yeah.
But, whoa, like, just no to the way Resident Evil chose to go with things.
It does feel like they lent on pre-existing material that's already, like, they did a lot of callbacks, as you said, with characters and stuff, and it does take away a lot. Like in the first one, the only thing that I've been on is literally the Hive, the Alice, the T-Virus, and and Umbrella Corporation,
And
that's
dogs that scare the living crap out of you.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. Kind of thing, and then yeah, but they bring a lot of it in their own direction and stuff like that, kind of thing, and they do lean on, they do callbacks, but in their own, in not kind of going, hey, look, it's that thing from the game you like, more kind of like, we know you like the game, so here's a little something for you, but let's continue on with our story, kind of thing. Whereas later films, it's literally just like, please like us. We got that thing you like from the game you like.
It's true, and they just, again, when you compare the two, I wouldn't have been as harsh on Resident Evil had we not done this video. I'll be completely honest. I'm one of those people that when a Resident Evil movie came out, I was like, cool, I'll watch that at some stage, or in some cases, I'll go to the cinema, because I was down with it. I enjoyed the first movie. I enjoyed the second movie quite a bit. I have no real problems with it. It was not as good. It's a lot of things that aren't great, but at least it was like, yeah, I know what I'm getting. I'll just keep taking whatever you're going to give me. But unlike Underworld, and when you watch them both back to back, as I have now done in the last kind of 2 weeks, man, just I feel bad for their character and the story that they could have told.
Yeah, like the only linking things with, yeah, like it is. I really think that this is meant to be a trilogy.
Yeah, I would have been happy if they'd stopped at 2. To be honest,
I know. I like the Nemesis thing in Apocalypse. Like that was a pretty cool callback to the game kind of thing. But it also made sense in the kind of like weapon project kind of, like it gave you hints of the Alice kind of project and the Alice powers and stuff. And then in the Distraction or Extinction, it gave you more of that kind of thing, and she does delve more into it. But like after, like it just feels like that they just started cashing in stuff. Like I know that it's like Resident Evil. We finally made a movie game.
Yeah.
Apocalypse. This is like, let's try again.
Yeah.
We kind of fucked that up. And then in Extinction, it's kind of just like, let's just get money, but complete the story.
We have a film franchise now, because that's essentially when it became the Paul W.S. Anderson, whatever the director guy's name is. It became his kind of, I can now just make these, because like we've already talked about the money, they made money from a profitability point of view. They didn't make any single studio stinkingly rich. This is not Star Wars. This is not Fast and the Furious. This is not like, oh my god, I can't believe we're making $1 billion movie every time. This is, I can't believe we're only spending this much and we're getting back this much. So he was given a lot of leeway, and that's why they could introduce powers, do all sorts of things, and just take them, remove them, give them back, forget about them. They just had to have a bunch of good scenes, essentially, and you got to go and eat your popcorn and enjoy. Which is why, Paul, I'm going to out myself and say that Resident Evil Afterlife, having seen it in IMAX 3D, I really, really enjoy about 70% of that movie, almost more than the rest of the movies, because I can enjoy each scene as a separate thing and go, man, that was a good scene. That was cool. That was peak Resident Evil for me. But watching it again recently, there's no reason that they had to tell the story so badly. Like, they make it wooden in between the good scenes. Why?
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Like, I don't agree that Afterlife could be better than some of them.
Well, actually, let's rate it. We're heading towards time, and we got to push on people to pick. So, Paul, I'm going to call it. I do not want to hear anything other than number 1 is the first Resident Evil. Tell me you don't.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cool.
No, that's fine.
Then choose as you will, and I will probably agree.
So this is the thing. This is going to be the fun thing. Apocalypse. Apocalypse is next.
Yeah, I think so.
I enjoyed that film. It had a lot in it. Resident Evil Extinction.
You're gonna go Extinction, okay? Or as we called it when we were laughing before, Tom Clancy's Vegas Resident Evil Extinction.
It was
Resident Evil Vegas.
I will like say this prior to starting the stream, we were going through what each of the places essentially that this is set in, because like this is the thing. Resident Evil is set in the Hive. Resident Evil 2 Raccoon City. Resident Evil Extinction is like Rainbow Six Las Vegas.
Yep.
Afterlife is
Prison and a boat.
Afterlife? Oh yeah, prison and the Arcadia.
Yeah, the boat.
And then the next one is the submarine base / suburbia.
Yeah.
Is it?
That one, which is, what's that one even called?
That's Retribution.
Retribution is, it's the Westworldy one. It's where we've created all these different. We created Tokyo. We created blah.
Yeah.
Just so they could do the video game moving through levels thing.
And then Resident Evil's final chapter is Washington DC.
Yeah, or as we were talking about it before, the tank with an army of zombies behind it. That's essentially what it is.
It's the million man march with zombies and a tank, and then the Hive again. But yeah, I will say that they go in order for me. They go in order as released.
It just gets worse. I'm going to go ahead and say, oh man, it's really tough to do this. But I think the final chapter might have been better than Retribution, because I think it's probably the worst. Maybe the worst out of all the things that we've talked about tonight. Yeah, I think it is. It's the worst of all the things we've talked about tonight. As even, Underworld's the worst. Underworld is better than Retribution, I think.
Yeah, that'll be another interesting ranking kind of thing. But yeah, no, I like Resident Evil, Apocalypse, Extinction, Afterlife, Retribution. See, the problem with final chapter Retribution for me is they are really close to like just being the same film to me.
And yeah, I hear you. There is a more obvious, for me, having watched them so recently. It is the one where they took a night off when they did Retribution, where they're like, look, we've got one more. They've told us that we're doing a sixth one anyway. It feels like they were like, yeah, let's get this one in the can and move on, because it's awful. So, Paul, I'm calling it, if it's Resident Evil versus Underworld as franchises, Underworld all the way.
Yeah. I'd say that there's more good in Underworld than there is in Resident Evil, even with its extra film.
But here's the tough choice. If it was only the first film.
Oh, I'm going Underworld.
I am too, unfortunately. I wanted to disagree with you there. But you know what? It's bloody close, because I think Resident Evil, that first movie, in its small budget brilliance, is, it was great filmmaking to make a good zombie movie in that underground kind of setting, with enough intrigue. I really rate the first Resident Evil movie for the time it was made and how it was made.
Okay, yeah. See, okay, I would agree that Resident Evil is a very good. It's an excellent movie, and it's an excellent kind of video game movie. I do not think, compared to Underworld, it is like, as in the gap between the two is quite vast, and the only reason is because. Because my thing is that Resident Evil doesn't seem like it's overly, it sets a worlds and stuff like that, and it does a plot that has been done before in a new way. Underworld's like takes a whole genre kind of thing, and kind of goes, yeah, that part, so we'll just ignore that part. Like as we said, the synthetic blood part, and also the whole like.
Well, there is a little bit of that now and again. Bill Nye has a load of fun anytime he gets to be a vampire. He's like,
but like, so they take essentially what I would say is a tired genre of vampires and make a lot of new stuff with it. Whereas Resident Evil, I think it takes a kind of takes what's there and just kind of really polishes a lot of good stuff. That kind of way, I guess, is the best way.
Well, I completely agree with Paul. Paul, closing statements. I think you've won for me. What I would like to throw back up on screen then is just those two things, folks. Get in the comments. Let us know which you pick as your winner. While you're all doing that, I would love you to like, subscribe, and share. But really, just thank you for your time. This was also a viewer suggested topic. We're going to be going back to our own topics again soon because we've pumped in a load of viewer suggested ones. But thank you, keep them coming. Paul, I got to out you for having something else going on in your life that isn't with me. Paul is cheating on me, and he has other internet friends, other YouTube internet friends. They're called Homebrew, and they're a D&D with a bit of a boozy overtone to it. It's D&D and drinks, folks. Paul, take it away. What you got going on elsewhere?
Yeah, I was going to make a joke that I'm actually working with David Tennant in the new Good Omens show, but I do a show called Homebrew Quest. It's a D&D show with a twist, as Patrick said. We drink beers, and we use the beer names and stuff like that in our D&D thing, either to name characters or to even use them as spells and stuff like that. It's based on Celtic mythology, Irish mythology kind of thing, and it happens every second Tuesday. So it won't be this Tuesday. The next episode won't be this Tuesday. It will be the 17th.
There you go. 17th of August at what time?
8 p.m.
8 p.m. on YouTube. That's Homebrew Quest, folks. I'm gonna throw this in all our videos. If you're into D&D, you'll love it. If you're not into D&D and you've always wondered if you could be, they're the creative, cool people that will get you into it. So check them out. Now, back to us. I'm seeing some Underworlds. I'm seeing Resident Evil allowed Underworld to be. Bruce says bye because he hasn't watched either, so fair play. But do check out the first movie of each. I'd like to thank everybody who joined us. Paul, really thoroughly enjoyed rewatching these movies. I think we should do another Versus someday. We'll probably do a slightly different format. But if you have any Versus, one franchise versus another out there on your minds, let us know. You never know, we might even use it for one of our videos. So Paul, I have been Patrick. You've got something to say and I'm closing this out. Sorry. Go for it.
RoboCop versus Terminator, just the first two of both?
Oh, let's discuss.
Okay.
Folks, get onto us on Twitter and we'll do that. You've been who?
I've been Paul.
I've been Patrick.
And we've been Hear Us Out. Thanks very much.
Bye. And we will see you soon. Bye, folks.